everybody.
Hey, how you doing?
It's the Macaroons.
All right, so we're starting this new series called Fight or the Fight for Love. And we want to talk with you all and have conversations, I guess, between the two of us about like, what is this thing called love, right? And why is it important to us? And also, this is going to be a very interactive series. So we are encouraging everyone to put some comments down below, put some questions down below, things that you care about, right? Maybe you're in a marriage, maybe you're thinking about getting married, maybe you're recently out of a marriage, and you want to, feed us questions about things that maybe we're going through, things that we're working through, or have been through. And we want to really talk to you about it. Because for us, we've had a lot of folks that we've interacted with that have gone through a lot of struggles in their marriage and or their relationships, and have asked us, how do you all make it through? So we figured we'd throw it on here, make it a series, and kind of go from there.
Throw it on here. Yeah, so, honestly, we felt like, I know for a few years since last year, I've always felt like marriages were under attack, especially when COVID came, because obviously you were being quarantined with your significant other, and it's different when you go out and be amongst other people and then come home. But really, some things can come about or surface in your marriage that you never knew existed. So I think this conversation will help other people, strengthen other people, and then honestly bring on that communication that maybe you're lacking or don't have. So yeah. Cool.
So it's the fight for love. You're good at violence. We'll talk about that at some point in time in this. So, the first thing we want to start out with is what does marriage mean to us, right? So, hon, what does marriage mean to you?
I'm sorry. So what does it mean to be married? What marriage means to me, obviously when you're dating, you have that, if you're dating the person that you see yourself with for a long time, you have that intuition like, okay, I would like to see what it's like to be married, or what will it be like if we were to get married and have kids. So marriage is being with someone who you see your life with, because I don't believe in divorce. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with divorce. I just don't believe in divorce, even though he tried to divorce me. But
we'll talk about that.
Being married is being with someone who you love unconditionally. So not to love someone on certain conditions. So like, even if he irritates me or gets on my case or makes me angry or we get in an argument, like I still love him. I would not love him. So being with someone who you can love unconditionally, being with someone who you can grow. We got married in 2016. I think we both can honestly say we're not the same people from 2016. So being with someone who you can grow with and accept their growth and accept their change. Also being with someone who you can see parenting with and having a level of understanding. So when you talk about parenting, bringing two backgrounds or two childhoods together and trying to figure out how you're going to parent together, so that way you can be on one accord and agree. So it's really, marriage is about being with someone who in all aspects of your life you can see them with you in your journey, in your life, and as you continue on to evolve and grow.
Okay. For me, marriage is about really connecting with a person in a way that maybe you haven't connected with someone before. And I know there are several out there that had a relationship and maybe stopped that relationship and got into a new relationship, whatever it may be. But for me, right, like marriage is someone that you are as you mentioned, you're unconditionally committed to. You're saying, hey, we're going to push through these things, we're going to work through them. And remembering that marriage is two people becoming one as a unit, right? I think sometimes people get that confused and they're like, one is one person. Like, no, you can't be one person. You still got two brains, two hearts, two feelings, two sets of feelings, excuse me. So it's important to understand that marriage is becoming a unit, right? Mm-hmm. You're becoming a unit feature, and you're moving through this thing called life together. So for me, it's really digging into understanding that person and saying like, hey, this is where it's at. So let's start with the first question. That's probably obvious to everybody. Why did you marry me?
So, just to give the background story, I was in a previous situationship that really was not a good situationship, and so.
Is that a new word that we're coming up with? Situationship?
Probably not. Edit that out. So I was in a situation with another person that was not a great situation to be in. So Brandon came along and swept me off my feet. Yeah, I know I'm silly. So Brandon came along and we connected. It was more than like an emotional connection. Let me say it that way. It was more of emotional connection. And for me at that time of my life, like I had really gotten closer with the Lord, was really really trying to be like, okay, this is my intention, be intentional living. And so I was like, well, Brandon, if you're going to talk to me, like, I'm not going to have sex before marriage. We're not going to live together. Like, these are the things that are non-negotiable for me because I've been there, done that. And obviously it did not result in obviously marriage. And so we were able to have those like conversations on what we wanted in life, what we want from each other. And then honestly, just who you see every day is who I met every day. So like, it wasn't something where I felt like he was being a different person. So like, Brandon was very authentic in himself, and that's not something that you see every day. So, you know, as we were dating, it didn't stop. Like the flowers and the love and the experience, it didn't stop. And then for me, it was more so his love for like the church, his love for his mother. Like those are the things that you look at when you're like, okay, if I really want to marry this person, like how do they treat their mother? How do they treat their family? So for me, coming from the family I come from, family was big for Brendan, and his family gatherings look different than my family gatherings. And so it was something where, not saying anything's wrong with my family, but it was just something that I wanted to get away from. A few things, activities that I didn't want to be a part of, and really see like, okay, there's a different side of family and different side of love. So that was something that I wanted to be connected with too. And then he pushed me, he encouraged me, he prayed with me, we did Bible studies together. So it was just like courting to a point where you're like, okay, like, yeah, if he get on his knee, I'll be like, yeah.
I need to reconsider.
But really, when you're looking at that significant other, it was what he brought to the table. And Brandon brought the things that were non-negotiable. And when we're discussing those things, they were non-negotiable for him. And so I think both of us coming out of relationships that we were previously in, there were just things that we knew we wanted. It was just, you know, amazing how we like kind of connect and was on the same page.
Very true.
So, why you marry me?
It wasn't for your thug life. During that time, I mean, it was an interesting time for me. I was out trying to figure out life. 5-year-old, thinking I had it all down, and but still trying to figure out like who am I trying to be, what am I trying to do. But ultimately, the one thing that kind of piqued my interest was somebody that would be willing to stand up to me. And not a lot of people do or have done that in my past. And what I mean by that is kind of like on that intellectual side, right? Or even just challenging the way I am and who I am. I'm a very forthcoming person. I tell people what I feel, how I feel.
You had to get adjusted to that.
Yeah, that's just who I am. I'm not rude, I don't think, but I'm just brutally honest at times.
That don't look right. Don't do that. That took some getting used to.
So,
did you just come for me?
No. But it was interesting because Chanel at that time kind of spoke out to me and was like, hey, get your life together, essentially. From a social media perspective, I was kind of going through a bad, tough period of time and tough week, and she kind of called me out on that and said like, hey, you need to get it together. Like normally your stuff is really positive and going, and it hasn't been for some time. And that's something that's important. And so for me, that kind of piqued my interest of like, who this chick thinks she's talking to, first of all. But really just kind of like who is this person and delving from there. So we followed each other on social media, which was ironic.
Blowing up on social media.
All that.
I
like one or two pictures, or 15.
Right, today is Sunday, tell the truth.
But just really interested in kind of like who she is, who she portrayed herself to be, and was that the real her. So as she stated, there was a situation she was going through. We actually kind of talked at the very beginning of the year, and then it kind of faded away for a little while because she wasn't in a relationship at that time. And then things happened and came back around, and we communicated from there. So for me, why did I get married? Ultimately, it was the fact that she was willing to stand up, willing to be herself, independent, a woman of God, and learning and trying to develop to be even better and stronger in her relationship with God. And then ultimately, someone that I could see, raising a family with, someone I could see, raising a child and having a home and going through some tough times and good times together. And I think we've done just those things, and Lord bless, we'll continue to do those things. So that was kind of the reason. Ultimately, at the time, she had a lot of different hair pieces. long hair and all that. Then all of a sudden it went to short. But it's all right. We still love her. My wife's hairstyle. If you ever go through our pictures, it changes every other week. So be ready if you're getting married to somebody that like hairstyle.
You are not preaching. Be ready, okay? That's nowhere. Be ready for your hairstyle in the Bible.
So
yeah, that's why marriage is hard. Marriage, honestly, for people who are getting married or going through marriage counseling, one thing I think was really good for us is we kind of wrote down our expectations for each other. You're coming from being, in households where older people are married and maybe your parents, and so they do one thing. You're really just trying to figure out what your marriage is like, not by what everybody else is doing, but really what it means for you. And so it's more than just a wedding dress. It's more than just that beautiful day. It's more than just the flowers. Marriage is work. And so for me, I think it's very important for women, for me to say to women, is you have to really dig deep in who you are, and identify who you are, and then make sure you stick with that. You don't lose that within your marriage, because it is easy to do once you become married and have children. You forget who you are, what your goals were, that you lose yourself. And that's very vital. That can let your marriage spiral, because you no longer identify who you are. You're no longer that strong person, if that was something that you identify yourself as. But just those characteristics, make sure you keep those and you grow from that, and don't go the other way, because it would make the other significant other, not feel like loved, or hey, who are you? Like, what's going on? So you want to make sure you're in tune with that, and then you communicate that, because then your husband or your wife can be able to say, hey, like, you don't seem like yourself. And so you can talk about those things, because that's really key in marriage, is communication. And that's something we still learn. I'm still learning. Probably like, you ain't my dude. But that was something that was an adjustment for me, transitioning from living in my parents' home, and then when I moved out, I literally moved into our home together. And so that was a transition piece for me, because it was like, what am I doing?
No, absolutely. So marriage is different for everyone, right? And everyone, I think that the key thing in this first convo is understand who you are, understand what you're looking for, and put that person up to a task, right? One of the big things that we did in the very beginning was kind of a pros and cons list of like, are we really serious about this thing? And if so, what are the pros and cons of being together? Because it wasn't rosy. I mean, our dating wasn't rosy. We had arguments. We had situations that, put us on edge of like, hey, if we're really trying to do this thing, we got to work through these. So, really take a moment to assess, if you're looking at getting married, really assess the person that's there. And if you are married, do the same. I think it's very important, and we've talked about it several times over, of just, doing your pros and cons list. It may seem very rudimentary, very simple, but it's one of the basic things that allows us to really assess what our situation is versus acting out on emotion only. Obviously, your emotions got to be there. It's got to be involved. But from a male's perspective, right, a lot of times we are very logical thinkers, and we're like, well, you on my nerves. And it feels like you on my nerves every 2 days, every 3 days, or every other day,
like,
every other hour.
Who you talking to?
Sometimes. But really understanding, right, the pros and cons of that and saying like, hey, here's where I'm at, right? And where are you at? And understanding like, is it really as bad as I think it is? And assessing that is very key.
Yeah, I think every time we came to a place where it was really hard, it was like, is this a deal breaker for us? Like, is this something that we absolutely, ultimately have to walk away from? Because at this point, it's not beneficial to me as a human being or my health or my mental health. But honestly, you just have to communicate. And I believe that, marriage counseling is very vital before you get married. And it's still vital during your marriage. I mean, we're going on, Lord's will, 6 years, April 30th, right? When we get married?
You already said it.
It's very vital to make sure you even revisit that. I mean, I think it was a couple of years ago, I refound the notebook that we had, and it was just really like our pros and our cons and what our expectations were, or what we were talking about in regards to, you know, if I'm having a bad day, this is what I need you to do. Or if I'm having a bad day, this is what I need. So, yeah.
So when you're looking at this whole thing, whether you are married, where you're getting ready to get married, or whether your relationship's on the rocks, take a moment to assess, why did I get married, or why do I want to be married? And really understand, you know, what are the important things? What are the things that person's bringing to the table? But most importantly, what are you bringing to the table, right? What adjustments may you need to make to ensure that, you know, the relationship can thrive and can be in a good space? And we'll talk about, as we go through this series, different situations, different questions, and really talk through like how we made it through, right? So today is really just kind of jumping into it, letting you know like what's happening, what's coming. We're super excited about, you know, talking about marriage and talking about fighting for love, because love is a powerful thing. I mean, when you have two people up against a situation, it's much bigger, much brighter than just one person individually walking through life, and it's a lot easier to have a partner with you. And so we are encouraged by our relationship. We're encouraged by others' relationships. We'll talk about that as well. You know, finding yourself good friends, good partners to go through this process with, but also being cautious and careful about those that you bring into your relationship and your marriage, because they can have a critical impact on what happens and the outcome. So
yeah, and then for women, just make sure you take advice from people who you know, are bearing good fruit, because you can take advice from single women, and obviously that does not apply for marriage, or if they've been in a marriage. Just be careful what advice you take from, and then try to keep it amongst your husband and yourself. I've realized that when we were going through some of our tough times, when I took it amongst other people, it was everybody else's perspective, but I was the only one that was actually connected to you. So it was just, and then they're trying to assess it or figure out how I'm trying to, it's just a lot. So just make sure you try to keep some of those things amongst you. But if you're going to take it outside of your household, outside of your marriage, make sure you are talking to people who bear good fruit, and actually people who are, you know you guys, have been with you guys. That way you're not getting advice from, you know, good or bad advice.
And willing to see both sides, I think is really important. Again, assessing why am I getting married, or why am I married, right, is very important, and having good input from that is always going to be there. It's good to have somebody that's going to look at you and say like, these are the things that you do, good and bad, right? But also be able to look at the other side and give some support and some affirmation, if you will, of the feeling. So this series, again, Fighting for Love. We are really excited for it, and hope that you all will participate. Please drop your comments, questions, concerns, thoughts, or disagreements below. We would love to talk it out and have a conversation about it. So until the next series, we'll see y'all later.
Toodles.